Hello everyone and welcome to my review of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, as a big fan of the previous Witcher games, I had some pretty high expectations for The Witcher 3. But with the game being delayed several times and the apparent graphical downgrade, which I will touch on later, I was worried that the game might end up falling short of what many people were hoping for. However, after playing the game through to completion, I am very happy to say that The Witcher 3 is an amazing game. Many of you probably already know this, but I want to take a look at not only what made it amazing, but what also it might have been missing or did wrong. Because no matter how good a game is, there's always room for improvement. So The Witcher 3 is the final part in a trilogy. But if you haven't played the previous Witcher games, don't worry too much, because the game does a decent job of filling in the blanks for new players, though it can require a bit of reading if you want the full picture of what is happening in the world of The Witcher, but it isn't really necessary. Without spoiling too much of the story, you play as Geralt of Rivia, a Witcher, a monster hunter for hire who is trying to track down his missing daughter Ciri, who is being pursued by the Wild Hunt, a horde of powerful spectral riders. It's very much a continuation of the story from Witcher 1 and 2, so expect to see a lot of returning characters such as Triss Merigold, Dandelion, Vernon Roach and more. But The Witcher 3 is not just a continuation, it's a full story all by itself, filled with excellent narration and storytelling, all set in an amazing world, filled with monsters, mysteries, lies, deceit. Other people have said this, and I do agree with them. It's kind of like Game of Thrones in a video game. However, one of my favourite things from The Witcher 2, which was the branching storylines, is sadly missing from The Witcher 3. Yes, there are plenty of choices to make, and their impacts are large, and the game also has different endings, but nothing really on the scale of the two main story paths from The Witcher 2, which was disappointing. But we all knew this was going to be the case long before release. It's just the kind of thing I miss the most, if not just for the replay value it gave the previous game. Lengthwise, I think the main story will take most people somewhere around 30 to 40 hours to beat, so it is still a very lengthy game. But really, that is only a small part of what makes up The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, because the game world is massive, like way bigger than even Skyrim, and it's filled to the brim with high quality content. There are several large cities and dozens of small villages to visit, each with tons of interesting side quests to complete, many of which have different choices and endings to them, and they are often tied together in some way to form a larger picture. For example, let's say you choose to save someone in an early quest at the cost of receiving a reward. Later on, that person might turn up in another quest and give you some important information that helps you kill a monster. But if he died earlier on because you accepted that reward, you don't receive his information, and so the monster slaughters a village before you can stop it. And that leads to another quest path where you have to learn the history of the monster, why all this is happening, and how to defeat it. My favourite side quests that work along these lines are the Witcher contracts, where you have to track down a monster, learn exactly what type of monster it is, what its weaknesses are, and then prepare for the fight using special Witcher potions and blade oils to increase your odds of defeating it. These requirements are absolutely necessary on higher difficulties, because you will get destroyed if you don't prepare. My second favourite side activity is definitely playing Gwent. Gwent is a collectible card game where you use cards and heroes based on people and creatures in the Witcher universe to build decks to battle against NPCs with. You can buy cards and heroes from merchants, as well as winning them from matches with specific people giving out unique cards. Gwent really is among the best minigames I have ever played. It's right up there with classics like Triple Triad from Final Fantasy. It's something I would happily spend like $10 to buy if it was a standalone product. I will be doing a more in-depth video about Gwent in the next few days, but until then, trust me, it's really awesome. As far as other activities go, you can hunt for treasure, compete in fist fights and horse racing, as well as spend time crafting weapons and armor from the loot that you've collected. It is everything you would expect from a top tier RPG. However, what is not so top tier is the game's inventory system. It's lacking separate pages for important item types, meaning things like your weapons, armor, trophies and horse equipment are all awkwardly bundled together on one page, and potions, books and food are all crammed in another. This, combined with there being no item storage locations in the game, makes managing your inventory a real pain. Yes, just dropping stuff anywhere is safe at the moment, but that could change at any time. This is probably the only part of the game that I felt was a step back from The Witcher 2, and I hope they will address it in either a patch or maybe in the expansion, because in an RPG it's really important to have a good inventory management system, and this game is just lacking that. As far as combat goes, it's very similar to The Witcher 2. You have your two primary weapons, which are a steel sword for killing humans and a silver sword for killing monsters, along with your Witcher magical signs, which allow you to perform magical techniques like generating a protective shield, as well as blasting fire, launching shockwaves, confusing and controlling enemies, and placing magical traps. There is also a new crossbow, but sadly it isn't very useful unless used in the water or on flying monsters. Of course, timed parrying and dodging are still the main cornerstone of combat, and there have been improvements to the animations as well as to the skills and leveling up system. You're now able to customize Geralt in a variety of ways by picking a variety of skills and using the new mutagen system, buffing up those skills by matching the colour of the skills to the mutagens you've collected. Overall, considering the past games didn't have much in the way of customization, this is a great change. However, I would have liked to have seen more diversity in the skill trees. Most of the choices were just percentage increases, and I didn't even find the alchemy tree useful at all. So I think there is still room for improvement with making their skills more interesting to use, because besides the new sword technique I learned and the alternate casting form of the magical signs, there really was nothing that stood out to me as interesting. Now, I did say I would touch on the graphical downgrade. So yes, The Witcher 3 doesn't look as good as it did when it was first revealed. However, it is still an amazing looking game, among the best I've ever played, and there are already mods available that you can download to help the game look even better. So while it is a little disappointing, I really think the whole graphical issue was blown way out of proportion. Also, the sound and music in the game are just as amazing as the visuals, and they all combine to make The Witcher 3 feel very live and immersive. It's rare that a game is able to bring in all my senses so well and tie all of its pieces together so seamlessly. In the end, my final score for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is a 10 out of 10. Now, that score doesn't mean the game's perfect. It does have some problems, but those problems never impacted my enjoyment of the game enough to matter. What really stood out to me most was the attention to detail in this game. From the interesting quest to the challenging combat, the large amount of decision making, the huge amount of immersive dialogue, along with the amazing story, and so many other small things that just tie the world together, made it feel truly alive and reactive to the things I was doing, which is something I feel a lot of RPGs fail to do these days. I finished up the game yesterday, clocking in at just under 218 hours. I've basically been playing it during every moment of spare time I've had since release, and I'm very happy to say that The Witcher 3 is one of the best games I've played in many years. If you don't already own it, for some reason, I would highly recommend you go and buy it as soon as possible. Thank you all for watching my video. If you have any opinions you want to share, leave them down below. And as always, I hope you all have a good day.